Well, this is Pastor Aaron from the Crossroads Campus, and I want to welcome you to this short introduction to the spiritual practice of fasting. Over these next devotionals, we are going to discuss the traditionally ancient practice of fasting. And to do that, I'd like to simply provide a backdrop and ease into the biblical model and how the practice can and should be observed even today. The practice is as old as religion itself, with examples of fasting not only recorded from the earliest biblical texts, but also from most major religions as well. It would have been normal for the Jews of Jesus' day. Most disciples of Jesus fasted 2 days a week, Wednesday and Friday, as a standard until the Enlightenment, when Western culture began to emphasize the mind over the body. And fasting helps to connect the mind and the body. In fact, in The Sacred Way, Tony Jones reminds us, physical disciplines aid our spiritual development precisely because the body and soul are so intricately intertwined. Fasting is a practice that gets our bodies in touch with God. We naturally separate the spiritual and the physical, but this is something we do with our whole person. We are the temple of the Holy Spirit, meaning we are the dwelling place of God. The ancient rhythm of life was one of feasting and fasting. We see this highlighted all through the Old Testament and into the life of Jesus and beyond. Jesus feasted. He encouraged bread and wine to be used when remembering him, performed his first miracle at a wedding feast, divided 5 loaves and 2 fish for his followers, and on and on. He also fasted, most notably for the 40 days after his baptism and before his public ministry. And yet, he did not hold his followers to a strict fasting schedule. The connection between the spirit and the body are highlighted in Jesus' words in Matthew 4:4. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. I would imagine that for some of you, fasting is something you are aware of or even practice from time to time. For others, you may practice a form of fasting during the Lent season, the 40 days from Ash Wednesday to Easter Sunday. For many of you, I assume, fasting as it relates to food would be brand new, and I'll assume that you may have a couple of thoughts rise up. Just as an example, a couple might be, I could never do that. Or my diet wouldn't allow me. I am medically unable to do it. And for any practice like this, you would want to consult with your physician. Some might say, I just love food way too much, or what does fasting really have to do with my faith? Now, I get all of those. That makes complete sense, and many of those are the things I think about as well. But honestly, it can be triggering. Talking about feasting and fasting and food can easily be the gateway to body shaming or dysfunction. However, we must be careful not to neglect a beautiful practice that connects our spirit and body to Jesus. As followers of Jesus, we can enter into the many practices of the Christian faith and still lose sight of God. It is not that you don't love the Lord, but the business of life can bring you to the point of losing your fresh and enthusiastic fervor for Christ. The discipline of fasting will humble you, remind you of your dependency on God, and bring you back to your first love. It causes the roots of your relationship with God to go deeper. Tomorrow, we will look at what Jesus has to say about fasting from the Sermon on the Mount. So before you write off this as some ancient practice for today, remember that in Matthew 6, the language that is used, and I believe that it is intentional, is, quote, when you fast, not if you fast. Meaning that as we follow Jesus, fasting ought to be a part of our regular rhythm of following Jesus. I'll see you tomorrow.